Hello, thank you very much for coming along tonight, and thank you very much for caring about this issue. Obviously, there's a lot of issues in this election, and this is probably the one that will be an issue in the next election, and the next election is the one that's not going away anytime soon. I'm a science degree, but not a science degree in climate science. I run a non-profit that takes people overseas to do community work in the third world. And for many years I was the research manager for an organisation called Vegetarian Victoria, which is a lobbying organisation, a support organisation. And I was the author of a little booklet called Leading Up the World, which is a presentation and a brochure. There's 160,000 of these being distributed around Australia. It's now in its fourth reprint. And it talks about the environmental consequences of our food choices. In my previous political life I was involved with the Victorian Greens, being in the Animals Working Group, and for some time chairing the Economic Working Group, through which we successfully lobbied, amongst others, for a carbon tax to adopt this policy. But I'm reformed, and I'm now the convener of the Animal Justice Party in Victoria, and the candidate for Melbourne Northern Metro. So, the Animal Justice Party is a party for non-human animals. So none of them are along tonight, I notice, but nevertheless, some of you might want to vote for us. So we are concerned for their interests. We're concerned about non-human animals, and we want to make their life better. And so the question arises about why talk about climate change, because it's a human issue, isn't it? Well, it's an animal issue before it's a human issue. Animals don't have the sort of technological solutions or the habitat flexibility that we have to be able to mitigate the stresses of climate change. So well before human civilization is devastated, there will be billions of individual animals and millions of species of animals go extinct. And I've been working on and promoting, educating people about climate change for many years, more than a decade. I've travelled to Nepal many times and climbed some of the big mountains there. You'll find the ice climbing school there that the Sherpas use is closed because there's no ice anymore. So that's a small problem, but the big problem is if glaciers melt and no longer feed the big rivers that support agriculture for about half the world's people. I've visited northern Canada and seen the late formation of the ice pack and what that does to the polar bears. And every year it gets a little bit later. And I've built permaculture gardens in Namibia in Africa and seen the locals struggling with changing weather patterns and weird weather events that they're not used to and don't appear in the textbooks. They've got no explanation and no recourse. And the point of all of that is it's the order in which things are going to be impacted: the animals first, and then the poor, and then us. So if we can't find everything with animals and everything with the poor, then I think we're all doomed. I don't doubt the science, I follow the science, and our policies should be guided by the science. Our policies should follow the evidence and not politics. That means you should be prepared to say things that are not popular. You should be prepared to address the problem head on and do what is required to solve the problem. There isn't any time to waste. We have an emergency. We see the next 20 years as being critical to achieve the turnaround that the world requires and make sure we don't hit any difficult tipping points. So we must return the atmosphere to pre-industrial levels of pollutants as soon as possible. And obviously doing that will require us to be emitting net negative emissions for a period. One of the things that is distressing about what everybody else has said tonight is that they haven't talked about all of the problem that is climate change. There's been a lot of interesting ideas and many of them are good, but mainly they've been about energy infrastructure and generation. So we support rapid decarbonisation of the generation infrastructure that will provide us power. And we must replace all of our power generation with all our fossil fuel use. So that's a lot of power. And hopefully that will be with renewable energy, so solar, wind, tide, hot rocks. We need more R&D, more implementation, and we need to be on a war footing to get this going. And the other thing, everything must be replaced by clean electric generation, or either renewable or, if necessary, nuclear. We need to stop importing oil and peace and non-violence suggests we need to leave the Middle East alone and leave the oil in the ground. The main thing I want to talk about tonight is agricultural practices. So, one of the main causes of climate change is agricultural practices. We need to cut down on the amount of sheep and cattle we produce, the methane they produce, and the land they use. Without doing that, we can't solve the problem. And it distresses me that no one else talks about it. It makes me think they're not taking the problem seriously. It's not just me saying so, it's everyone says so. The United Nations Environment Programme says so, James Hansen says so, the IPCC say so, Nicholas Stern says so, Al Gore has even become vegan. So, politics has struck again. People aren't looking at the science and aren't trying to solve the problem.